Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Wednesday, the 28th of October. It's now time for Power BI Manchester User Group webinar. Tonight we've got two fantastic guests, one from Denmark and one from London. So I'll do a quick intro. If you haven't attended Power BI User Group before, my name is Alex Taylor. I'm a data analytics recruiter for Walters, and you're in for a treat. I'll quickly go through my slides. So the Power BI User Group has now been going for 4 years. We started up in actually almost 5 years actually, but 4 and a bit years. We've been going since late 2016, and we've had over 45 meetups. It's been the largest user group outside London, and we've now got over 2,500 members with several followers on LinkedIn. Prior to COVID-19, we used to do our sessions in face-to-face. We used to get 80 to 100 attendees, so hopefully that will return once COVID has gone and we're back to a new normal. So these sessions are fun, interactive, and we do like to share slides and encourage interaction with our speakers. So with that in mind, please do drop your questions on the right-hand side of the Q&A column. So any questions you have for Tania and Jens, our two speakers tonight, please put them through, and myself, Sheb, and Ben, who are moderating in the background, will try and answer them to the best of our knowledge. Otherwise, we'll put them to both speakers when we have a moment. I said, just the reviews of our sessions. I said, I know these slides are repetitive, but yes, it's been going for a while, and I said the reviews are always very positive. So long may it continue, and I'm already planning 2021 sessions as we speak. About me, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a BI and data recruiter, long in the tooth, been doing it for 16 years. I'm very passionate about data as well as recruitment, and I'm involved in many events alongside the Power BI User Group. As you can see on the right hand side, it's a list of roles that I recruit for, and my number's at the bottom, or you can contact me on LinkedIn if you have any questions in regards to looking for a new career or looking to take on a hire for your team. Tonight's agenda, after I've wrapped up, we'll have Tania Tombak, with a deep dive into relationships in Power BI, and then after Tania, we've got Jens Vestergaard with more deployment. We'll try and wrap up around 8 o'clock, depending on the length of both talks, but I think they'll be around 40-45 minutes each. As I mentioned earlier, please do put your questions on the right side, and we'll do our best to answer them. If you're watching this on demand, then please feel free to message either Tania and Jens any questions you may have. A little bit about Tania. She is a Microsoft specialist, BI trainer. She loves templates, so setting up templates and create databases. She specialises in models, dashboards, visual representations of data, structured spreadsheets, and automating complex processes. And Jens is a BI professional with over 18 years experience. He's been working with Azure. He's attended and presented at numerous events across Europe and the world, including SQLBits and various other webinars and sessions. So it's a pleasure to have both Tania and Jens on board tonight. So without further ado, Tania, good evening and welcome to your first presenting gig at Power BI User Group. Shame we can't have you up in rainy Manchester this evening, but you are live from your study, it looks like. So welcome to Power BI Manchester, and do share your slides when you get a moment.
So am I live now?
You are live. You're live.
Hi.
Airways. Hi there.
Okay. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, perfect. So
down the right hand side, there's a little insert there. Bingo.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you. Okay, evening everyone, and as we said, that's the deep dive into relationships. And the first question is, why relationships? I am very passionate about relationships. Relationships is one of the most important part in your data model, and certainly a foundation of the model. And it is too often when I see that people create this foundation incorrectly, and then the whole report, the whole model falls apart. So what is relationship in Power BI? If we put it simply in simple English, in Power BI, relationships are used to propagate filters applied on the columns of some model tables to other tables. So the purpose, as I said, is to propagate filters. In Power BI, relationships are all about filtering. So here we have a simple model where we have 3 tables, product category, products, and sales. The category table relates to product, and product relates to sales. And as I said, it's all about filtering. So if I want, for example, to calculate sales by for technology, what I can do, I can filter category table by technology. The filter will propagate to products and filter the products to technology products only. And the product then, the filter will propagate to sales. And in the end, we will have results of sales by technology products. Now, to better understand relationships, just very, very quick overview of 2 major modeling schemas. So in Data Warehouse and Power BI, you have 2 major schemas, Star schema and Snowflake. And the crucial difference between the 2 is that in the Star schema does not support, does not use normalization, whereas Snowflake schema uses normalization to eliminate redundancy of data. So, for example, in a Snowflake, you would have dimensions. So, for example, we have a product dimension, and it would be normalized and stored in 3 related tables: product category, subcategory, product. And so your typical Snowflake model would look something like that. So that's a typical transactional database, but it can be used in Power BI. But remember that in transactional database, you use the database to create, retrieve, update, delete rows. And because of this, they are building normalized view to reduce redundancy and increase consistency. However, Power BI is all about reporting and filtering. It's not, it's a reporting tool. And so the issues, if you use Snowflake in Power BI, some of the issues, not all of them, but some would be, first of all, you would load more tables, which will be less efficient from performance perspective. More tables means longer relationship chains, which we have to travel to transfer filter from one table to another. And of course, all those tables and fields will appear in the pane, in the fields pane. And so the users or report authors will struggle to go through that, and it creates a less intuitive user experience. So, Star schema. In a Star schema, you usually see more or less dimension tables combined into one. So here we can see that products table, products dimension, which used to be 3 tables, is now combined into 1. So that's the typical example in of a Star schema. And what you have, you think of the tables as mostly dimension and fact table. Dimension tables usually descriptive. They describe, for example, business entities, and they typically used to slice and dice the data. So they contain key columns and descriptive columns. So, for example, customers, products, those are descriptive tables. And then you have fact tables, which store events, observations. So they have numerical fields, which are summarized in your visuals. So dimension tables support filtering and grouping. Fact tables support summarization. Ideally, in ideal world, you would have tables which are purely dimension type or fact type. However, it's not always possible, and in real life, we quite often have a mixture of those. So let's have a look at relationship. So what's important to understand that, yes, we discussed that all it's about, relations are all about filtering, and it has 2 major concepts. We have 2 major concepts: cardinality and filter direction. So cardinality, there are 3 types of cardinality: one-to-many or many-to-one. Some people refer to them as 2 separate ones, but I prefer to think of them as one-to-one and many-to-many, and we will have a look at all of them today. So let us have a look at a typical one-to-many relationships. So we have a dimension table products, and each product within product table is unique. So products IDs are unique. And we have fact table orders, where of course product IDs would be duplicates, and it's a factual table. So it's all about when and what was bought and the prices, etc., etc., etc. And that creates one-to-many relationship, and in one-to-many relationship, obviously, each product may have many orders, whereas each order line is for one product. One thing which is important to note is that when in this type of relationships, if we have often records, so for example, let's say that in orders, we have a couple of products, so a couple of orders listed for products which do not exist in the product table. If that happens, then the additional blank row will be added within relationships to maintain referential integrity. And all unmatched records will be summarized under this blank. And this is very important, and we will come to that later when we will discuss many-to-many, but that's an important concept to remember. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn to my Power BI model, and I'm just going to quickly run through these three tables. So this is a very simplified example. We will look at more complex ones. This is a very simple example. It has three tables, two dimension tables, customers and products, and we have orders as well. Now, orders is a fact table, and we have cardinality here, one-to-many from products to orders and one-to-many from customers to orders. One thing that we have in orders we do have a couple of orders for products which do not exist in products table. And I just want to very quickly demonstrate that if that happens, so currently I have metrics which is showing, which is slicing the data by product subcategories. Those product subcategories come from product table. So if I now add sales, we can see that additional blank row was added to account for all orphaned records. And we now have a true picture because we have all sales listed here. Okay, so that's straightforward one-to-many relationship. However, the second very important concept, which should not be underestimated, is that little arrow, and that represents the filter direction. So what we have here, that little arrow just tells us that we can filter orders by products, but we cannot transfer filter from orders to products because of that arrow. It's a one-directional filter. Now, if I want to filter products, let's say by furniture, and calculate totals for furniture only, that's fine. I can do it very easily. But if I would like, for example, to take high priority, to filter orders to high priority and see which products are ordered as high priority products, I can't do that because the filter does not allow me to do that. Okay, so let's have a look. What I want to do in the next step, I'd like to add customers, to calculate customers by product category. So I use a simple straightforward measure, customer count, which equals count rows customers. And as I added to my table, unfortunately, that shows incorrect result. I mean, result is probably correct, but it just shows the grand total for each product subcategory. That can't be right. If we go back to relationships, we can see what is happening. So we're filtering products by specific subcategories. The filter propagates to orders and filters orders to only those subcategories. We now want to count customers who bought those. But unfortunately, the filter does not go that way. It it does not allow us to filter customers by orders. What is the solution? Now, what a lot of people do, they simply go to relationship properties. So if I double click on that link, these are the properties. And as you can see here, there is a filter, cross-filter direction. And what I can do, I can change it from single to both. Once I've done that, we have now a bidirectional filter. And if I go to my visual, hooray, it's now been fixed. So we fixed that problem and we are happy. However, you haven't fixed it. In fact, you created a huge problem which may result in complete mess later on. What do I mean? I'm actually going to set it back to single, just for the time being. So what we do now, we now added another table, which is service calls. We added service calls, and the service calls are placed by customers. So we have a link here between customers and service calls, one-to-many, and also they are about products. So we are going to link products and service calls. At the moment, if I want to, for example, count service calls by product category, that's perfectly all right. There is absolutely no ambiguity. That's the only possible way of filtering service calls by product. We cannot propagate the filter this way because we have a block here. The filter is in the opposite direction. So what happens if I add service calls, and service calls again just count in rows, and if I add those service calls to my metrics here, we can see it's been calculated correctly and everything seems all right. However, you remember that just in previous step, to solve the issue between customers and orders so that I can calculate customers by product category, we turned that into bidirectional filter. And as soon as we've done that, we created ambiguity in our model. So what is ambiguity? The model is ambiguous if you have multiple paths to transfer filter from one table to another. That's precisely what we created here. So we have one path to transfer the filter, and we're now having the second path to transfer the filter. When you have ambiguous model, the engine will either throw up an error and it will warn you and it will just whistle, no, you cannot do that. Or the engine will find preferred way to transfer the filter. And because in our case, you can see that there were no alarm reason by the engine, that means that it found a preferred way. And my guess here that it found that short way, direct way is usually a preferred way. Now, to show you the danger, mind you, this is a very simplified model, so it's easy for an engine to find the correct way. But quite often the models are much more complex. So what I want to do, I want to demonstrate that if we force the filter by different paths here, we will get different results. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to first break this filter completely and force the short filter, the preferred filter. And then I'm going to break down this link, this filter. And by doing that, I will force the longer filter. And we will see what result will be produced. So how can we do that? It's very easy. What we can do, we can use a function which is called CROSSFILTER function. CROSSFILTER function allows you to set the filter between two columns, either to single or to both directions, or to breakers, to set it to none. So that's precisely what I'm doing. In one measure, I'm breaking the filter between products and orders table, and in the next measure, I will break the filter between products and service call to force the longer filter. So let's have a look. I've already done it. So that's the first one. Oops. So that's the first one. Okay, and we can see that when we forced the short pass, it produced the same result as the preferred one. So that's right. But if we force in the longer pass, then we suddenly see that result is totally different. You may argue, and you may say, well, wait a second, we can live with that because here the engine found the correct path. So who cares? But however, this is not the full story. This is only part of our model. If I go and to the view where I have all tables, we can see that we have many more tables. So we have calendar as well. And what happens now, if I want to add calendar filter, let's say I also want to filter by years. I'm now filtering service calls by products. That's the preferred path. But when I'm filtering calendar, that follows totally different path. Let's have a look and see what will happen when we add calendar filter. So I called it CROSSFILTER mess. And at the moment, they all look the same, as previous page. But let's have a look. I'm selecting calendar filter. I'm selecting year. Oops. Now all three show different results, and some of them are obviously incorrect. Others may be correct, may be incorrect. We don't know. The issue is we can no longer trust this model. We don't know anymore what is going on. So how we can solve that problem? Because that's a very serious problem. What we can do, I'm actually going to stop to set that back to single. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create virtual relationships between calendar and service calls. We can create virtual relationships instead of physical ones. And the function we're going to use to do that is a very important function. I suggest you to master it. It's called TREATAS. So TREATAS applies the result of a table expression as filters to columns from an unrelated table. It is great to use when relationship does not exist between the tables. And the syntax, you have to have table expressions and columns you're filtering. For example, very primitive example, if I want to filter product colors from product tables by red, green, yellow, I can create a table, red, green, yellow, and that will set the filter on color with three values, red, green, and yellow. And of course, you probably guessed, I already done that. I already created that measure. And the measure is here. What did I call it? This one. So as you can see, we calculate service calls, but we use TREATAS to apply calendar date as a filter to service call date. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add this one to my matrix, and you can see that's the correct answer. That one is the correct one. Okay, and that's very important. You can see that bidirectional filters produce ambiguity, and they are very, very, very dangerous. You can no longer trust the calculations. Having said all that, we could, instead of creating virtual relationships, we could literally directly link calendar and service calls. So I'm just going to link them. And if I do that, you will see that the default short relationship, preferred relationship, produce correct results. So that is fine. So the question is, would you use virtual relationship or would you use physical relationships? Few things to keep in mind, which is very important. It will depend on the model. There is no right or wrong. What kind of model you have? I'm now creating two circles here. So I have kind of like a one circle and then I have an inner circle. And if I change somewhere to bidirectional filter or something, that creates a nightmare. So on one hand, physical relationships are always faster than calculations. On the other hand, sometimes you just create circular references and that becomes again very tricky. So again, it will depend on case-by-case cases. You have to decide it on a case-by-case cases. I'm going to delete this relationship for the time being because we're going to move to the next one. So what's next? So we looked at bidirectional filters and the answer is no, 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 never use bidirectional filters. Well, having said that, you can use bidirectional filters if you have something very similar like this model. If you have 3, 4, 5 tables and it's a perfect star schema, then bidirectional filters will be okay. As soon as you start having something like that, something a bit more complex, never, ever avoid them at any cost. Okay, next one. What I have here sales calculated, so sliced by date, by months, but I wonder kind of by which date. If we look at relationships, we'll see that we are slicing orders by order date because that's how we link the two tables. So the default setting is by order date. But unfortunately, we only charge clients cards when we ship the product. So next to my sales by order date, I'd like to show sales by ship date. So I do have ship date here. And what I can do, I can create another relationship to ship date. The issue is, as soon as you create more than one relationship between two tables, only one can be active. And that's obvious because otherwise we will create ambiguity because we have two active relationships. When we add, for example, sales to our sliced by calendars, the engine wouldn't know by which relationship we want to slice the data. So only one relationship can be active. How we activate inactive relationship? Again, there is a DAX function which allows us to do it. It's a straightforward, very simple calculation, and it's called the function is called use relationship. And it's literally, so you say, well, use the relationship between calendar and ship date. Now, the only thing to take note, as the name of that function suggests, that relationship must exist by the time you use it. This function only works for existing relationship. It could be inactive, but it has to exist. If relationship doesn't exist, you can use TREATAS, or there are other functions that allow you to do it. So you can create a virtual relationship. Which one is better here? Again, it is a question on individual models. So sometimes I would use virtual relationships. Sometimes I prefer to have inactive relationships. So if I add this measure here, we can see now sales by order date and our sales by ship date. And that's all about one-to-many relationships. And what we are going to do now, we're going to have a look, a quick, very brief look at one-to-one relationships. Okay, one-to-one. So imagine that we have two tables. We have one table from our HR system, it's employee info, and we have employee ID, their names, addresses, what have you. And then we have employees from our accounting system, we have their salaries, pension funds, etc. So if we link these two tables, it will create one-to-one relationship because we have unique employees' IDs in both tables, and Power BI always creates bidirectional filter. However, if you think about it, that's really should be one table. So ideally, it's advisable if you have one-to-one relationship, consider of combining the two tables. Okay, so some issues which this type of relationship provides. Again, you have more fields in your field pane. So again, authors will be not, report authors will be not happy about it. You can't create hierarchies based on two tables because hierarchies are supported only for individual tables, and it may produce unexpected results if there is no complete match between the two tables. For example, one or two employees missing from one table. So usually it's better to combine them into one table, something like that, through merge query, for example, or via DAX. So that's one-to-one. And the last one is many-to-many, and that's also very, very, very important because that's what people quite often get wrong. So the first one, I'm going to go quickly through that, but I don't believe it's many-to-many. Though a lot of people think of something like that as many-to-many. What we have here, we have two tables, and they're both dimension tables. So we have translators and languages, and obviously translators speak multiple languages, and we can group languages by translators and count them, for example. Or, on the other hand, languages are spoken by multiple translators, and again, we can group translators by languages. Now, a lot of people think of that as many-to-many. In fact, these are two separate one-to-many relationships between two tables. Okay, so each translator speaks many languages, each language is spoken by several translators. What is missing here is the fact table in the middle. So, and that table can only come from your data source. So someone has to supply you a middle table, for example, I don't know, employment agency, which supplies us translators, hence supplies us who speaks what language. And in fact, we will end up with two one-to-many relationships. So as I said, as some people think of these two as many-to-many, I think of them as two separate relationships. But what we're going to do now, we're now going to look at proper many-to-many relationships. And we're, of course, going to switch to Power BI desktop. So, many-to-many. We added another table, budget. But budgets are not made for individual product. Budgets are made for product category and by region. It's probably a bit tricky to say, but by product category, by region. So when we create sales are made for individual products, so we have one-to-many relationship between products and orders. However, if I want to link budget and products, if I try to do that, both tables have duplicates in product category column. So if I try to link it, what does it say? It tells me that this relationship has cardinality many-to-many. And it doesn't mean we cannot create it, but it tells you only create it if the significantly different behavior of many-to-many relationship is understood. Only use ever many-to-many relationship if you understand how to use it. For the time being, I'm going to cancel out of that. And let's have a look. How can we solve this problem? So there are three possibilities. We can use virtual relationships like TREATAS. We can use bridge tables, and we can create truly many-to-many relationships. So let's have a look first. Okay, many-to-many. So that's my table, product category, my matrix, product category sales, and I'm now going to add budget. So I'm just going to add budget. Oops, and I added it in the wrong place, budget. Now, as expected, because there is no relationship between product categories and budget, it simply summarizes budget and shows us total budget, grand total for each category. But we already know TREATAS function, and so we can use TREATAS to create virtual relationships. So this is my TREATAS, and as you can see, what we're doing here, so we would like to use product categories as our filter on budget product categories. Now, values, for those of you who know DAX well, so values returns a table of unique product categories from products table. And so for each row, for example, for this row, that will return one value, office supplies, and that value will be applied as filter to budget product categories. As simple as that. So if I add this measure to my matrix, it works perfectly all right. Perfect. Now, why wouldn't I use just that virtual relationship? You can, but imagine that you have other numerical fields in your budget and you want to add more calculation to this matrix. So that means that you have to create more and more measures. So you're creating more measures. Also, it depends who are your users. Would they understand if you just creating a model for them and they then themselves have to create measures and have to create visuals? Do they know how to create virtual relationships? Again, there is no right or wrong. Remember, it depends. It is case by case basis. You have to understand pros and cons and options available to you. So what else can we do? Well, we can create bridge table. What is a bridge table? Bridge table is simply a table that contains unique product categories. So if we have a bridge table here, which contains unique product categories, we can then link it, we can link it to this one and create one-to-many. And we can link it to this one and create one-to-many relationship. So we will have two one-to-many relationships. And that's what we're going to do. So, of course, you probably guessed I already created these tables. So what I have here product categories. And the way I created this table, you can create it in Power Query, by the way. You don't need to create it in DAX. I just wanted to have everything kind of in one screen, in one place. So we chose distinct product categories from products, distinct product categories from budget table, and that will produce unique product categories from both tables. We then use union to join these two tables and another distinct to eliminate all duplicates. What I want to draw attention to is that you probably noticed that we had 3 product categories: technology, furniture, and office supplies. And now we have the 4th one, which says other. It's because in our budget table, we have 4 product categories. We have other product category. And we will get to that because it is very important. And I also created region table using the same technique. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going back to my relationships, and I'm going to add those 2 tables. So I'm going to add product categories. Okay. And I'm going to add region. Oops. Okay. And I'm going to link these 2. So I'm going to link product category to budget product category It creates perfect one-to-many relationships, and I'm going to link product category to products, and it creates perfect one-to-many relationships. There is one issue here. One issue here is I'm going to filter budget by products, but you can see that the filter direction is in opposite direction. So unfortunately, I need to set that to bidirectional filter. So if I double click on that and set it to bidirectional filter, so now I would be able to filter this. And if I go to my metrics, we can now see that budget column, which previously without any relationship showed the grand total for all of those, for all products, it now showing correctly. Now let's go back to our relationships and let's have a look at what's at the big picture. So I just created this relationship, this bridge table, and I added relationships between budget and products, and I created bidirectional filter. I now have to do the same for region. I will link region to budget and region to customers, and I would need to create bidirectional filter here. So I'm going to do it because I'm going to delete it later. I'm going just to do it this way, okay? And here I will have bidirectional filter. Now, if I do that, I now have, again, ambiguity, because again, I'm creating bidirectional filters in kind of circular structure. So that's probably not a good idea. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete that. That is an option in some, it would be a good option in some circumstances, but not in this particular model. So I'm going to delete these relationships. Oop. And finally, I'm going to create a proper many-to-many relationships. I'm going to link products to budget. And yes, it says only use it if you fully understand what many-to-many means. I'm going to use it. I'm going to go for it. So I now have many-to-many. So we have this many-to-many. But what I also have, the default setting here is bidirectional filter. And quite often people totally miss it. They link the two tables and leave it as is, or they assume that that's the proper setting for many-to-many relationships. Let me tell you, it's not. It is very, very, very dangerous. If you ever go for many-to-many, always make sure, always, that you set it to proper single direction filter. How do you do that? If we go here, we now have two options for single relationship. It says us, do you want products filter budget, or do you want budget filter products? Well, we always filter products, sorry, budget by products. So we will use this one. I'll click OK. And now, though I have many-to-many, but the filter direction is single, and that's very important. If I go back to my visual, we can see that it's properly calculated. Now, a couple of things you have to be aware about when you use many-to-many. One issue is many-to-many does not support blank rows. Remember, I draw your attention to blank rows. If we have one-to-many, and if our orders contain orders for products which do not exist in products, a blank row will be created to summarize those orphan records. In many-to-many, that is not supported. So if I group my budget by budget products categories, see, I have this other category, and that's the correct summarization. But if I slice it by product category, so if I generate my filter from products, because I want to have sales as well as budget in one visual, then the other category, which does not exist in products, does not appear here. There will be no blank row to alert me that there are other budget categories. And of course, that creates some issues because users may not realize that that's not the full picture. And another issue is cardinality. So many-to-many transverse filters only at their cardinality. That means that we linked product and budget via product category. So we can filter budget by product category, but we cannot filter it by product subcategory. You may think that it's common sense because it's many-to-many relationship. But when you hand this to end users who used to one-to-many relationships, they assume, okay, I may filter because I'm filtering products, so I can filter sales by products, by product category, by product subcategory. So they may accidentally apply these filters without realizing that that's wrong because they don't know that you use many-to-many relationship or they don't understand. So when you use many-to-many, you have to use it with caution, okay? There is one thing that I forgot to mention. Remember our customers, our customer count, and we originally applied bidirectional filter, and then we said that that's bad. So how do we solve the problem? We use CROSSFILTER. So we use CROSSFILTER function to solve the problem. So we count customers, but we are saying just for this measure, just for counting customers, make sure that we use the relationship between customers in orders in both directions. Ну, я пытаюсь.
Okay, I think.
Sorry,
Okay.
I had a dropout again. Am I back?
You are back, Tania.
You're back.
Okay,
You're back.
sorry about that. Okay, so just to conclude, yes, you can use bidirectional filters. You can use many-to-many relationship. You have to be aware of dangers. You have to be aware of dangers. To conclude, I'm going to show you one last slide, and this is the model which I'm trying to fix. So this is one of my clients who created a model, and they didn't know much about relationships. You can see that they created lots of many-to-many relationships with bidirectional filters. It is now a complete mess. It's impossible to fix it. We now have to redo the model, but they already created about 200 measures, which all would need to be scrapped and redone. So in conclusion, make sure that first of all, when you start your model, you clearly think of relationships. You think which relationships you can use, which you cannot use, and you have to replace them with virtual relationships. And once you've created your model correctly, only then you start building measures and visuals and produce reports. And that's it from me for today. I hope that you picked some useful ideas and learned something from my presentation. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Oops.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Tania. It's Ben here. Just a quick one. We've got one question that has just come through, which is from Andy, and it says, does using distinct as in the DAX value impact performance, or not the DAX value, but the DAX function?
Well, I probably would create. It depends what is the reason why you're using this. So if you're using to create a bridge table, I'd rather to do it in Power Query. That's true, because obviously that will be faster. However, you may use distinct function for other reasons, not necessarily for creating breach tables. So you can use it totally for different reasons, and then it's okay to use it. If you're thinking of whether it's best to create tables via DEX or Power Query, I probably would create tables in Power Query. But as I said, otherwise, if you need to use it for measure rather than creating tables, then of course you still have to use it.
Yeah, of course. The real answer is it depends, doesn't it? Which is what you just said. I'm fully agreeing. You know, I'll try and create tables in Power Query where I can, but of course, you know, sometimes you've got to create tables in DAX on the fly to give you the information you want, because it's not, you know, you can't reference multiple tables in Power Query. So that was it. Great. I love that model that you showed at the end. I've seen models like that. And it comes down to, as you said, you know, if you get the model right in the first place, then your reports are good and simple, and you can understand the numbers that come out. If your model is a mess, in the nicest respect to all of our customers, then, you know, that's where we get involved as consultants, because suddenly the numbers aren't adding up, or we can't make any sense of them, or the performance is awful. And, you know, as is usual with Power BI, let's not try and answer every question that is answerable with a massive model. Let's be sensible from where we go. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. There's some thanks in there coming in from the Q&A, so thanks to everybody who's responding on that. Alex, do you want to introduce our next guest? I'm going to put Jens's video up there so he can be seeable, visible at least.
Good evening, Jens. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing good.
You look very, very smart tonight.
Thank you.
You an hour ahead of us? Is that right?
Yeah, 8 o'clock.
So your clocks went back at the same time as ours?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
An hour more of 2020. That's not what we needed.
Yeah, true. It's a lot darker, a lot earlier.
Yeah.
But we're really looking forward to your talk tonight. So without further ado, you've got around about an hour if you want to talk for an hour and do Q&A, but it's up to you. But I'll leave you to it. Your screen's now sharing.
Yeah.
And I look forward to your deploy model talk. Thank you, Jens.
Thank you. Thank you. So as the title says, 50 ways to deploy your model. It's kind of inspired by, well, an old Paul Simon song called 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Because deploying models with Power BI and onto Azure Analysis Services and Power BI service is not always as seamless as one could want. But the agenda for this session is a little bit about me and a disclaimer on Power BI, Analysis Services, Embedded, and so on. Then we will move quickly from the most basics stuff in Power BI Desktop, then on to pitfalls. We will see tabular editor command line in play, as well as I believe a fairly unknown Microsoft deployment wizard. And then we will look at some enterprisey Azure DevOps stuff at the end. Please keep questions coming during the session. I know the guys will be monitoring the chat, and you can interrupt me at any point in the presentation. So please feel free to ask questions. A little bit about me. I've worked for 15 plus years with programming. Started out as a C# developer, then moved on to data, and then on to BI rather quickly, and has been working with analysis services, multidimensional models for quite some time, and then moved on to obviously tabular models as the engine progressed. I work and live in Copenhagen, Denmark. I worked in healthcare, transportation, logistics, government, and retail sector, and currently am a partner at Catman Solution, where we kind of do BI as a service, we'd like to call it. So all of our 60 plus customers subscribe to a BI service from us. They have a lot of data, 40 different data sources that we tend and take care of for them. So they just have to dig into Power BI and do their, data-driven stuff. So first off, a little disclaimer. Not all the demos are as interleaved as I'd like them to be. And this is due to the fact that Microsoft is kindly offering up 3 different types or editions, if you will, of analysis services. The Azure analysis services, the Power BI one, both shared and premium, and the embedded Power BI. And I see a lot of scenarios going from one to another and back again and so on, but that's currently not really possible without, well, in most cases it's not possible, but in some it is. And we'll be looking at some of those scenarios. First off, obviously, I trust you all see a Power BI desktop file opened with the AdventureWorks data. And we will begin off at the most basic step. So we will just, once we are ready to share our content, we will just hit the publish button. And usually it's not like a not responding mode, but I don't know what's hit it. While we wait for that, we can go and have a look. And I created this _PBI demo Manchester workspace, which is a regular workspace on a shared service. And for some reason, this is not. Yeah, so hence the face palms.
It's for demo gods, of course, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's,
even the most basic stuff. Yeah. Okay.
It's punishing you because you have the, you're not based in the UK and you're
yes,
based in Copenhagen.
Yeah. Maybe it's going back and forth. I don't know. So we see a list of workspaces I have on my Power BI tenant, and the PBI demo Manchester is the one that I want to publish this to. We then hit publish, and as soon as the Power BI desktop application publishes it, it will give me a nice link to go to the pbix workspace file. But I can also just pop into the workspace over here and browse. And we now see both a data set and a report. So if I open the report up, we will be seeing same, right? So I guess everyone's on the same page here. What if I were to make my workspace a dedicated capacity or a premium capacity? So I would save this one, and now you see out here, wow, that's not working with the multi-screen, but okay. So you see the little diamond indicating that this is actually a premium capacity workspace. From within the Power BI desktop file, got it. This would actually not be any different. So if I hit publish, I see the same workspace. I don't see any diamonds or anything else. I can just select publish, and I'm prompted, since it's already there, you want to replace, it's impacting one report. I can even view my impact. So see the lineage of the data set that I'm impacting, which is kind of new and flashy. In some scenarios where you have a lot of reports, this can actually be quite helpful. But I obviously want to replace this one, and I'm, prompted with the same output. Power BI desktop has successfully published the Power BI dataset and report. Got it. So if I go back, there. We still have the same report. So this is where it gets interesting, because actually now that it's on a premium capacity, I'm actually able to connect to that workspace. So up here, I have my management studio, and maybe I should let me know if I should maximize any fonts. But in here, in my workspace under premium, I have a workspace connection, and I can connect with Management Studio to that workspace. So let me see my password. And now it's listing the AdventureWorks database that's actually residing in there. So this is actually how it looks deployed in the Power BI service, right? Now, in a scenario where I, as a developer, is working with the business in actually coming up with new ideas to new reports and new models and so on, you come to a point where you actually want to, share this with more than maybe just the team. Maybe you want to share it with the company in its entirety, or maybe you want to share it globally for some users, specific users, and at one point you might run into having to manage it on a more enterprise scale level. And this is where usually when we had the multidimensional data models, we were just able to actually go into the Visual Studio application, which is then again not responding. Seems like everyone's after me. And then we could just point to a multidimensional database, and we could just grab the code, do like this over here in Management Studio, just for the fun of it, while we wait for the Visual Studio to complete. Management Studio can actually generate the code behind the tabular model for you. This is a lengthy JSON document, even though it's just the AdventureWorks database. And I bet if you were any of Tania's models, it would be even an even longer file. So this is 10,000 rows or so. And from the beginning off, we are seeing some familiar stuff. But in Visual Studio, you were actually able to use this little item. So I would connect to a database. I would then enter in connection, server name here. It's logging into the server. No. Okay.
Jens, if you're like me, you see that far too many times. And It's just a frustration, but there you go. That's the consultant's life, isn't it?
Yeah. So actually, what you don't see down here, now I'm just trying to get this into view. It says you're trying to connect to Power BI, blah, 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 which is running in tabular mode using Tabular Model Designer. The option to open allows services database supported for servers running multidimensional mode only. Aha, one says. I've heard about a little nifty tool called Tabular Editor. So let's see if Tabular Editor can do something about this. And just before we go any further, I'm just connecting to the premium capacity of this workspace. So you see actually only this data set that lies in here. If you connect to obviously a server with the multiple databases, you will see them listed here as well. But here we can see that the AdventureWorks is the one that I was looking for. And voila. We can see the same as Management Studio would show us, translations and all the tables and so on. So now I can actually save this as a BIM file. Let me just save it in here. And then I can go back into my, come on. Oh, there we go. Beforehand, I created a, if I create a new project, I can select either to import from server, so I can actually point to the server where I want to import from, or I can just have a tabular project, and that's what I did just before this presentation. So I'm just going to open up some solutions, this one, and this is where I can begin to actually manage this in Visual Studio. However, for this to work, it does need a workspace server. I could put in, actually I've not tried this. I could put in an Azure Analysis Services, which is the instance right here. I can test the connection. Connection succeeded. And this is the one here containing all of these databases. So CM Next tab test is the one that I'm pointing at currently from my Visual Studio. But if I want to open up with that, it has some compatibility level issues. So it says Power BI datasets using M-based data source formats are only supported in Power BI services. Okay, fine. But I knew for a fact that my AdventureWorks project is only using SQL as a source. So the error is a kind of misleading in this sense. But what if I changed the workspace server down here? To actually, this is a first. I've not tried this. See if that actually works. Didn't I get that? Okay, so it's not supported in Visual Studio to connect to a premium capacity. So it says using Power BI endpoint for workspace server is not supported. Okay, fair enough. But the fact that my test analysis services server does not support a pbix, which I just exported, is somewhat odd. Even more so when you go look at the properties of this workspace. So in the properties of the server, so to speak, you can see that these are the supported compatibility levels. Just get that out. Like this, up to 1560. And if I right click on my analysis services instance here, I get a similar list. So something's not right about this. This is where the first of these enter. What the? So there's no real way to explain why this is not supported, except when you look at the version number. So this is the Azure Analysis Services, and this is the Power BI Premium Capacity. And you can see a slight version difference in here. So this is where the first scenario where I'd actually wanted a seamless back and forth kind of action between the Power BI developers sitting with the business, deploying to their premium capacity, and passing that on to the development team in code, actually, because the development team would just be able to extract all of the models from the premium capacity models and then put them into a source control system. That's what Visual Studio also gives you. If we see down here, I've added this to our Azure DevOps. In here, Cadman Solution, Visual Studio Com DevOps PBI demo. And if we go and have a look at that, we can see that the solution is here and the model.bim, where the proper compatibility level for a Visual Studio project is, the AdventureWorks database, and all of the model components are in here. So why is it even interesting to have this code behind? It is so because whenever you do changes, you want to maybe control how the changes are propagated into Power BI and who is to test and who can actually promote models from test Q&A into production. And when we first see our repository in here, we can see that Azure DevOps is smart enough to say, you might want to set up a build for this because we can see its code, it's a solution, and so on. So if you set up a build, you can have an artifact that you can actually publish somewhere later on in your process. So we just click the button. It's supposed to be easy, right? So we see connect and select. They're all done for me. I just need to configure which kind of pipeline or which kind of application my pipeline is supposed to output. And I don't see an Azure Analysis Services project or Power BI or something in the first items here, so please show me more. And I can scroll all the way down. It's not really supported by Azure DevOps out of the box. So this is the next facepalm. Why is this? I mean, a lot of other stuff is supported, but not the analysis services tabular model. I mean, analysis services has been around for 20 years or so. So that strikes me as a bit odd. But if we set up a pipeline on our own, we can build. I can now choose the classic editor, so you can. It's more. It's easier to follow along what I'm doing. So I select a source, the Azure repos in my project, which is DevOps. I select the repository. I select which branch. If I have multiple branches, I can, build those. But this is the only one I have. I can continue, and then I can select from all of the different items here again. But nothing is really necessary for the building of this, and other than the building of the solution. So this is either a MS build or a Visual Studio build, where we can add this in, and we just build any solution files that are in the repository, and we can then have a adventure works CI like this. Once we queue that up, I can run a build from this, and then I can actually create a release on top of this build. So rather than creating the release for you, I'll show you the ones that we have. This is our actual production releases, and this is just to illustrate that something is not as easy with the tabular models as one could wish for. So obviously we have a deployment to test, and then deployment to production afterwards once this is approved. It's the same thing that goes on in both environments, so to speak. We call up a PowerShell script that deploys the tabular model. We have a scenario where we actually want to deploy up to 60 models concurrently, or not concurrently, consecutively. So it's obvious that this is something that we want to have automated. And if we want to look at the production script, it actually deploys completely equal to the test. So it might be the one to look into, the deploy tabular. But this is highly advanced and beyond the scope of this session, because we fiddle with a lot of data sources in our model, and this might not come across as clear as I'd like to. So what do we do if we do not want to create this tabular deployment by PowerShell? And what do we do if we just have a simple database? We could use, Microsoft has published a, let me just see, did I close that up? Nope. Something's fishy with my, there you go. So when you install Management Studio, you get this Microsoft Analysis Services deployment exe executable file. It's a deployment tool. I don't know if you are aware of it. It's helped me out numerous times. The one thing that you want to know about this tool is that it has to have a file that is postfix.as database. This tool was used for the multidimensional models, but can also be used for tabular models. So let me just show you this one. These two files are actually identical. So if we look at the file here and in here. You can see that these two files are actually identical. So I just renamed the model BIM to model.as database. And when I do that, I can fire up this application, which has a GUID. Can select model.as database, and then I can say I want to deploy it. Let's just see if we have any identical databases. Just want to show you that it's actually deploying to the server. So we have this panorama.jve, and we just call this 2. And another thing that will hit you when you deploy models is that whenever you deploy, all credentials are lost. Just have to cough. So this tool offers you some options if you want to deploy partitions, retain partitions, deploy roles and members, retain members, don't fiddle with any security at all, or replace with whatever you have, and so on. And then you can obviously set the connections to your different data sources, which are in the model. Then I can select if I want a default processing, full processing, or none. If I select default or full, I will actually, and then it offers me actually to create a deployment script rather than deploy it. I then deploy it, and as we see here, it's deploying to Panorama 2. And then it says authentication key, blah, 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 and then some Danish. But it is actually saying that, so it's in English. The given credential is missing a required property. And I have an Azure Blob connection, which is with a key. And that's actually lost in transit, so to speak. So if I back up, say none, just refresh because this fails. I don't think it actually deploys the model, or it erases it. It does some kind of shadow deployment. But now that I'm not processing, I can actually deploy the model. Then I can fix the connections afterwards. But obviously this is cumbersome. It's not as elegant as you want it to be. Now we have the model. Okay, so hit by auto shutdown, I guess. Thought I had it configured. So it's because we scale down servers during off business hours. So now we have an S0 instance. So just bear with me a few minutes till we scale up. I scaled it up just before, but apparently it's a 1 hour trigger. But what we can do in the meantime is that when you in a management studio connects to a tabular model, we can have a look at the, no, it's still not. So it's the server that is not responding. So this one should be. Let's see if this has any connections. So I can actually script, create or replace a connection. And for the right ones, the Azure Blob and also the SQL connections, you can actually specify the passwords and the keys in here. So let me just go over here. Actually, I prepared a script. As you can see, this is for, well, you can't see that, but I know it's for the model that we just deployed. So we just want to rename this to 2. And this one. And this one. And so this one. So now I'm actually, this is a create or replace for the structured data source for the SQL authentication. And this one below is for the Azure Blob, where I have the account and also the key down here. So if my servers are back up, let's just see. It's moved. Please reconnect. So it's responding slowly because it is actually evicting a lot of models. When we scale it down, we are almost at full capacity during daytime. So it's loading databases from storage once we bump it up. So now it's online on tab test, and for good reason, I've stored my password in a file, so you can't actually see that. But what I'm doing here is a PowerShell script, which is taking the JSON that is created from Management Studio, where I create or replace this data source. And then I replace the placeholders with the proper values. And then I use a PowerShell commandlet called AS command, or invoke AS command with a database on a server with this query, which is just the JSON, and with these credentials. So once I run this, which is proper. So one came through and the other didn't. So maybe it wasn't online. So let's see. This comes through. There's one, there's 2. And now I'm actually able to process the database after deployment. If credentials fail, it will fail quickly. Otherwise, it takes some time to process this one. But it's really cumbersome to have to actually go through these steps. Yeah, you just want to deploy your model to a server, And you can obviously also deploy from the tabular editor. So if we open from the file and we can go in and see the same, we can see these objects in here, the Azure Blob and the data source connection. And if we want to deploy that, I could actually try and deploy it for the just for fun. There's one already, and we just call this Planorama. No. So I can't do that. I don't have any write access to the endpoint, which is a bit weird. Now I'm beginning to think that I remembered incorrectly. Choose destination server or enter a new name to create a new database, blah, blah, blah. I am server admin, so any missing, so I just need to read it in Danish. So the XMLA write support is not activated in the Power BI premium capacity. So once we do that, we can actually do it. But what if I wanted to deploy it onto just a test server? It's looking up all the models, and that's where before the session I had a scale up of the server, and once it's in that I don't know, in that state, it's kind of questioning all of these databases. So when it's scaling, you are in for a lot of error messages. So let me just deploy, and this should just try and go back to the Power BI tenant settings, capacity settings probably. No. Yeah, I'm scrambling a little bit to find the XMLA endpoint settings. Oh. Okay, we'll have to leave that for another session. Yeah. But if we go back to analysis services in here, refresh this one, we should see a number 3. And if I want to browse that, log in. Okay. Someone's after me. Unable to obtain. Now it's try and refresh it. Then reconnect it. Log on. Oh wow. Just trying with my same. This is a bit annoying. I was I have access to the server, I have access to all of it, I can script it, as we can just see. So I'm not sure what goes on. And I select browse. It should be connecting me directly to the tabular model, but it's not, apparently.
The demo gods aren't with you tonight.
No,
no,
not at all.
Do you have much? Do you have a lot much? I can't speak myself. Do you have a lot you want to run through, or are we kind of coming to a halt because of the technical issues that we're facing?
Well, I guess people kind of get the idea of how many ways there are to actually deploy this. One thing that I wanted to show was actually in the pipelines here. No, actually, let's skip that and just head on to the tabular editor stuff, because we can actually use tabular editor to actually validate our models. If we go and see the tabular editor, let me just hit it up in here. It's in the source code wiki. There is a section on command line and the command line options. So if we put our code or model into code in Visual Studio or develop via tabular editor, we can have it run in Azure DevOps pipelines and releases. And that's where you can actually install tabular editor on a build agent and then have it deploy your model to any given server that you'd like. One of the things that I want to point out in that sense is that while Daniel has a Power BI Tips series 4 episodes where he's actually in the final one is actually demonstrating this, I want to add a little twist. So if I want to add a new pipeline, just take the classic editor once more, and we can take this code sample as an empty job, which leaves us with a basic pipeline. In here, we can see that the pipeline one runs default on a VS 2017 Win 2016 server, but we actually can use a more lightweight operating system, Windows 2019, rather than the whole suite with Visual Studio and so on. Because there's such a thing as chocolatey. And this is a platform or a tool where you can install all kinds of software. So if we go to chocolatey.org and we look for Management Studio, it says, which edition do you want? When you install Chocolatey on your server, and that's actually a task, you can actually install Chocolatey on a build agent, and then you can have it called Choco install SQL Server Management Studio, or Tabular Editor, which is the clue. And it's always up to date. It's once this Chocolatey package is updated, and that it's done when a new edition is out, you still run this Choco install Tabular Editor. You don't need to assign any edition or build numbers or anything. So when you're in here, you install the Chocolatey, blah, 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 and then you add this task and you select the command install and use this Tabular Editor. The next step that you want to run is a command line like this. And then you can run all of your start, wait, Tabular Editor, and blah, 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 with whatever options you have here. And you have access to, in the pipeline, you obviously have access to the build output from this pipeline. So when you've built your code, you can actually have that residing on a arbitrary build agent, and then you can run these tasks and have it deploy on any server that you'd like. And the beauty of this is that you can set it up so that once this is done and everybody's tested, it can automatically promote your code to run into Q&A and into test and into production eventually. That way you have a streamlined setup of how you're deploying your model into production when you go enterprisey, schmenterprisey, or whatever you'd like to call it. I think that's as far as the demagogues lets me go. Let's just do one final test. See if the service is up. No, still not. No.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what's really going on.
Yeah, it all isn't as good in Copenhagen as we tend to think. Yes.
So hence these images. But that was actually in regards to the various editions of the analysis services engine that is residing in analysis services and Power BI service, and also in embedded when we come to that.
Yeah. All right. Brilliant. So thanks for that, Jens. Now, FFS, I know what that means because I have kids. But Tia, you know, I know what that means because I've got kids, right? FML, I don't know about FML.
For my life.
Very similar. Something my life.
Okay, that's hasn't reached the locked down areas of the Northwest that I live in yet, but maybe it will. All right, brilliant. Thanks, Jens. Alex, over to you, mate. If you want to, let me see if I can get your video up there. Let's
That's
see.
all of us on there. All of us. All right.
Still
All four of us. Hi, guys.
See, I can never work the system. You're still live, but I think we're going to try and get Alex.
Okay. All four of us is fine.
That's okay.
Split screen us. It's like it's a Zoom call. Thank you very much to Tania and to Jens. I'm sorry you had a few gremlins tonight in Denmark, Jens. If there's anything else you want, any other reports or videos you've done previously or sessions you want me to share, have you done that presentation previously?
No.
Okay.
That's why the demo gods after me.
Well, I said I was just talking beforehand, but maybe if you want to come back in December and do a talk with us, we'd love to have you.
Yep.
So thank you very much to everyone who's attended this evening, who's taken part, everyone who's participating, asking questions. Thank you to Tania, to Jens, to Ben, Shep, who was with us at the start. Power BI Lunch and Learn is back next Wednesday. Is that right, Ben?
Yes, next Wednesday. Do you want to know what's on there, Alex?
Yes, please. We all want to know.
Oh, we all want to know. So 12:30 Wednesday. Jens, you're going to have to look excited as we announce this because your video is still live. We've got heat maps and tables, I think, from somebody. Woohoo! And I will be running through help and bookmarks and really trying to get your Power BI report kind of more useful straight away.
Right.
And the next Power BI Master is back in 4 weeks' time, Thursday, the 26th of November. We've got 3 speakers. You may have heard these speakers, guys. We've got Chris Wilderink from Holland, Michelle Rozima, and Maria Florencia Kurip. I can't pronounce the name. 3 fantastic speakers in the Power BI world from 3 fantastic countries. And I'm looking forward to them presenting next month. So that'll be a slightly extended session, probably run between 6 to about 8:15. And in December, if we can have Jens back and possibly we'll have another couple of speakers for our Christmas edition, which will probably aim to go live around about the second or third week in December, but I'll get a date penciled in. But thank you very much to everyone who's participated this evening. Everyone in Manchester, there's 10 minutes to go until my night kicks off. So enjoy your evening. Have yourself a fantastic rest of the month. Have a happy Halloween, and I will see you in 4 weeks. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jens. Thanks, Tania.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay. Bye.